Okay, welcome everybody. You guys alive? Yay! Okay, so today we are very fortunate to have Jan Null, who's going to talk to us today about El Nino. And I think we're all excited to hear what he has to say. I'll just tell you a little bit about Jan Null. If you don't see him normally in the newspapers, he's got to be the most quoted local meteorologist in the Bay Area and further. But Jan has a degree, a BS degree from UC Davis, my alma mater, and then got his master's in geography here at San Jose State in 1992. He worked at the National Weather Service, or worked at the National Weather Service, consulted at the National Weather Service?
I worked for
Worked for National
24 years.
Okay. And now runs his own consulting company, Golden Gate Weather. So you'll see his name, Jan Null, Golden Gate Weather. He was a lecturer at San Francisco State for quite a few years, and is a lecturer now here at San Jose State. And when is your class? Do you teach here?
I don't have one this semester.
Okay.
I think Allison has one for me next semester.
Right. Okay, it was last semester you were
Yep.
teaching here. From 1999 to 2004, he had a column in the Mercury News, and he's an expert in El Nino. So he served on an NCAR panel to the House Science Committee, one of 3 experts in the country, just basically providing advice to the White House. And has an article in Weatherwise coming out next month.
Coming out any day
Or
now.
any day now. What's the title of the article?
El Nino.
El Nino something.
Some
Okay,
subtitle.
that's enough.
You know, I like subtitles. So.
Great. So please join me in welcoming Jan Null to
Thank you very much. It's fun to be here and talking about something that is certainly at the top of the news. I have probably averaged an interview a day for the last month by somebody, something about El Nino. If they catch a sea snake off of Ventura Beach, is it El Nino? Or actually, they write the headline first, and then I try and counterbalance that. So I have a number of subtitles. I think the one that was put out was that El Nino is not an adjective, and that comes from people talking about it's an El Nino storm, or El Nino flooding, and we'll sort of talk about some of that. It's also, I always have I usually have a great big slide that says it's complicated. It's not A equals B. I'm going to be talking about a lot about climatology, not a lot about forecasting, because we really don't have enough cases to look at. And then also, OLT 164. One of the newest things I've just learned about El Nino. Anybody know what that reference refers to? Okay, if you want to write an N with a tilde over it, hold the Alt key and go 164 on the keypad. Now, instead of doing the cut and paste, if you're in the Apple sphere, it's Command Option and R and some weird stuff. So anyway, we won't go there. This is a cartoon from the Sacramento Bee from the Hype in 1997. This is not new, but it's just as relevant. There is all this buzz about what El Nino is going to do. We knew less then about it than we do now. These are all current headlines. I did a Google search for anything in the last 4 months. And all of these are things that are actually in the paper. So now, how many of those are clickbait? I don't know. We won't even go into that. And there's ads for El Nino too. Anderson Windows has this countrywide ad. People have sent me something similar to the top left one. Posted on my Facebook page for the last month or so. Is your roof ready? You cannot get a roofer, by the way. Right now. If you want someone to come repair your roof, they're all booked up because everyone is anticipating El Nino. And then over the left is the ski resorts up at Tahoe with the unfortunate term that was used by an oceanographer down at NASA JPL called a Godzilla El Nino. And thanks, Bill. And then of course this is one of my favorites. It's death and destruction. So we're going to sort of do a little bit of myth busting, sort of what El Nino is, what causes it, what some of the historical stuff was. One of the things Dr. Cordero did not mention is that this past Sunday I was on the Weather Channel show, The Weather Geeks. And if you haven't had a chance to watch it, Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock here, they take a real good look at the science of meteorology. And Dr. Shepard and I had a lot of fun with it. Could have used about 3 times the amount of time, but you know, I think we got a little bit of myth busting done. And I have a web page. I'll point you to that a little bit later about all the misconceptions about El Nino. That's sort of what we're going to crank through in the next few minutes. Some of those are El Nino is coming to California. Why isn't this true? Yeah, it takes place in the tropics, down along the equator. It spells drought relief. Maybe we would love to know that. All El Ninos are the same. So if we take whatever we had in '97 or 2010, and that's what we're going to get this year. This is my fave. El Nino is a big storm. There's so many references and questions I get from the uninformed media and others that they expect we'll be able to see this on a satellite picture. No. Automatically equals flooding and big waves. I don't remember a story I've seen, at least electronic media, where they have not had, where they're talking about El Nino, maybe talking about good facts, but in the background they'll have streets flooded and big waves crashing on the ocean. It just seems part of the paradigm, and that gets into the public mindset. So what happens in the Pacific? What causes El Nino? So this is, one of us there's a half a dozen of these really nice graphics like this. I like this one because it sort of is this 3D cut. So here's South America, Indonesia out here, the equator, sort of a slice into the Pacific. Normally we have cold upwelling along the South American coast, along the equator with the trade winds, and we had the warmest pool of water over in the Western Pacific. Periodically, that pattern shifts, where we will have the warm water will spread to the east. We will get warm water at the surface along the South American coast, and this will impact what the pattern is for primarily the subtropical, and then additionally the polar jet stream, which then impacts us and other parts of the world. One of the other things that can happen with the stronger El Ninos is that the trade winds can actually reverse. And we're starting to see some of that now, especially in the mid-Pacific out around the dateline. We did not see that when we sort of had our pseudo-fake, never quite made it El Nino last year. Those trades never reversed. We never had the coupling between the warming of the water in the Pacific and the atmosphere. This year we're seeing all the coupling. We're seeing all the sorts of things you would typically expect. Kind of the history of the name of El Nino, if you don't know. But back in 19th century Peru, or maybe even earlier, the fishermen, and that's very much a fish-oriented economy along the Peruvian coast, they noticed periodically, every 2 to 7 years, is sort of what the textbooks all say, that the ocean waters would warm up. That's when that upwelling got cut off by that warm push of water eastward. They mostly fished cold water species. They all went elsewhere. So their fish count went down. This was often happening during the winter months. Typically they sort of equated it around Christmas time, and so they called it El Nino for the Christ child, because it occurred about that time. It is not, however, Chris Farley. I'm not playing the cut from Saturday Night Live. I've seen it too many times. Real briefly, I think this is my only La Nina slide. La Nina, the trades are actually stronger. The warm water is pushed even farther and is warmer over in the Western Pacific, allowing for cold water to occur along the equator in the Eastern Pacific. And we see much more in the way of upwelling to go with it, all this warm water out here.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Why is El Nino such a big deal in La Nina business?
The impacts that we see from La Nina are typically not as strong. The way that it shifts the water circulation is such that the impacts, especially here along the California coastal areas, is not as strong, so it sort of is almost an afterthought.
Yeah, I once asked the question of another talk that why under La Nina we don't have more Western Pacific hurricanes, and it turns out that the increased trade winds suppress the cyclonic motion.
Right. Yeah. I think sort of some of the elements we see the impact upon the hurricane and typhoon seasons this year are that they're going to switch over during La Ninas. So this is the typical storm track you see in all the graphics with an extended Pacific jet stream, especially the subtropical jet, the polar jet, such as it is, tends to be farther north, more impacts into the eastern United States, and there's sort of this wet plume that is pushed across the southern tier of the United States. Now this is a very generalized look, and we'll be seeing over the next dozen or so slides why it is really generalized. This is what happened, I think this is a more typical example. So this is the 500 millibar pattern from November of 98 through 97 to March of 1998. And basically we had the zonal flow from Japan right to San Francisco, right to San Jose. And I remember working that as a forecaster. Basically, we just had one shortwave embedded in this after another. And one of the real characteristics of that was, as a forecast challenge, was that the models, now we are talking almost 20 years ago, but the models could not keep up with it. This was driven, the 300 millibar charts were like 150 knots plus, just racing across the Pacific. The models were always about 12 hours late. As we got on into the winter, we actually got better at saying, okay, well, the model is going to be way too slow. It's going to come in earlier. But so maybe something for forecasting challenges as we go on through the winter to keep in mind if we see this really zonal flow setting up in the across the Pacific. Again, this is sort of the typical chart that you have about some of the impacts that are seen with El Nino. One is much drier because all this warm water and the associated convection has now moved into the Eastern Pacific, the area around Indonesia, northern Australia, Southeast Asia, much drier than usual. I believe there have been some reports now of some wildfires and droughts in Indonesia. This is one of the things, what we're seeing, hopefully, enhanced rainfall. Typically, on average, that's what they say. You can see some of the other impacts. A lot of this is tied to the Southern Oscillation, and this was discovered back in the 1920s or so, when Gilbert Walker, who was a botanist actually, and a mathematician, was looking at the monsoons in India, and he was looking at different pressure patterns and things. One of the things he noticed was this seesaw, what he called the seesaw, where the pressure differences across the Pacific would periodically reverse. And the model he used was looking at the sea level pressure of Tahiti, down here in the Central Pacific, and Darwin, Australia, up in the north edge of Australia. Normally, and as you would expect with the trade winds, the pressure at Tahiti is higher than Darwin. But periodically, he would see this flip-flop. And he ended up calling this the Southern Oscillation. And again, that was his atmospheric response to the sea surface temperature anomalies.